Emma stepped onto the dusty gravel of the shooting range early in the morning, when the air was still cool and the sun was just beginning to stretch its rays over the distant hills. She carried with her a rifle that looked nothing like the shiny, high-tech weapons most shooters wielded. Instead, it was old, worn with scratches along its wooden stock, and a scope that had seen better days. The weight of it felt familiar in her hands, as if it was an extension of her own body. But the people, already gathered at the range, barely gave her a glance. Most were seasoned marksmen and women with expensive gear and confident stances. They eyed Emma's modest equipment and shook their heads, muttering things that floated just loud enough for her to catch. They said this was a place for serious shooters, not for someone who carried a toy. Emma said nothing as she moved to the firing line. Her heart hammered, but she had trained herself to breathe slow and steady. The target was set 6,000 meters away, a distance so great that many said it was impossible to hit. But that was exactly what Emma had come for. She settled into position, resting the rifle against her shoulder, and peered through the faded glass of the scope. The world shrank to a tiny circle filled with blurry shapes and a lone target that looked no bigger than a speck of dust. Around her, the chatter grew louder. The other shooters whispered doubts about the girl with the old rifle, about how she didn't belong, and about how her shot would never land near the mark. Emma had heard this kind of disbelief before. People had laughed at her back when she started, when they saw her practicing alone in the woods, when she ignored their sneers and kept aiming at targets that no one else would even attempt. They thought it was just a hobby, a passing fancy, a joke, but she knew better. She had spent years honing her skills, learning the wind currents, the slight tremors in her hands, the way temperature changes could shift a bullet's path. She had practiced in rain and sun, through pain and exhaustion, all for this moment. Her finger hovered over the trigger. Her breath steadied her body perfectly still. She thought about the wind brushing across her face, the soft hum of insects, and the faint rustle of leaves in the distance. She adjusted her aim fractionally, taking into account the tiny movements she felt beneath her feet. This was not just a shot, it was a test of everything she was made of, everything she had endured. The other shooters began to lose interest. They turned their heads to talk among themselves or to prepare their own weapons. Emma ignored them, focusing on the target so far away that it seemed like a point on the horizon. She counted, slowly to herself. 1, 2, 3. 4, 5, and then she squeezed the trigger. The sharp crack of the rifle echoed through the range, and for a moment time seemed to freeze. Eyes snapped to the target, and then to Emma herself. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd as the bullet struck the tiny mark dead center, leaving no doubt about the shot's precision. People who had mocked her now stared with wide eyes, mouths slightly open, as they struggled to comprehend what they had just witnessed. The man who ran the range approached with a mix of shock and respect in his gaze. He asked how she had done it, and Emma smiled quietly, saying only that practice never betrayed her. But before anyone could fully recover from the shock, a movement caught Emma's attention. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw a figure step forward from the trees at the edge of the range. Someone she hadn't noticed before. Their face hidden beneath a wide-brimmed hat and dark glasses, but their presence was unmistakable. They watched her closely, as if waiting for something or someone. Emma's pulse quickened as a strange feeling settled in her chest. It was more than just curiosity. It was the sense that her shot had set something in motion. Something much larger than the range itself. She turned back to the crowd, who were now buzzing with excitement and disbelief, but her mind was elsewhere, focused on the watcher in the shadows. The man from the range had started to speak, but his words seemed distant, like they came from far away. Emma took a deep breath and made a silent promise to herself that this shot was only the beginning, and that whatever lay ahead, she would face it head-on with the same calm and resolve that had carried her. Here, and just as she lowered her rifle, the figure from the trees moved, suddenly disappearing behind a thick cluster of bushes, leaving Emma with more questions than answers and a heart pounding with the thrill of what was to come. The crowd remained, silent for a moment, their eyes still fixed on the tiny target that now bore the unmistakable mark of Emma's bullet. It was as if the world had shifted, and suddenly everyone realized that the impossible had been done. Yet the awe was quickly replaced by murmurs of disbelief and frantic whispers trying to explain what they had just witnessed. Some shook their heads, convinced it was a trick, while others began to question everything they thought they knew about marksmanship. Emma stood quietly at the firing line, her heart pounding but her face calm like a storm just beneath the surface waiting to break free. The old rifle in her hands was no longer just a toy. It was a weapon that commanded respect and whispered secrets of precision and power. As she reloaded with practiced ease, the watchers could not help but steal glances at the figure who had appeared near the edge of the range. The stranger's eyes were hidden beneath the brim of a dark hat, but their posture was deliberate and full of intent. They seemed to be studying Emma as if she was the key to a puzzle they had been trying to solve for a long time. The whispers grew louder. Someone muttered about government agencies. Others spoke in hushed tones about secret organizations, but no one knew for sure what the stranger wanted or why they had come. Emma's mind raced with questions, but she kept her focus on the rifle on the target and on the strange presence that lingered like a shadow just beyond reach. The wind shifted and carried the scent of pine and something metallic, something unfamiliar and dangerous. She adjusted her stance and peered through the scope once more. The target seemed impossibly distant, but she felt a strange calm settle over her as she calculated every variable with the precision of a seasoned expert. The shot left the barrel with a sound sharper than before, and the bullet soared across the open space, seeming to defy every law of physics as it traveled toward its mark. Time slowed again. For those watching, the bullet strike perfectly dead center again, and the silence that followed was heavier than before. People looked at Emma with a mixture of fear and admiration, as if she held a power beyond explanation. The stranger took a step forward, then paused, watching carefully, waiting for something to happen. Suddenly, a low rumble vibrated through the ground, a sound not from the shooting range, but from somewhere deeper and darker. The crowd turned as one toward the source, their faces pale with uncertainty. Emma's eyes narrowed as she lowered the rifle and scanned the tree line. The stranger had vanished, leaving behind only the lingering tension of something unseen, something waiting to reveal itself. The man who ran the range approached once more, his face grave and his voice low, warning Emma that she needed to be careful, that her skills had attracted attention beyond the ordinary. But Emma was no stranger to danger. She had learned to read the signs, to anticipate threats, to trust her instincts, even when everything around her seemed to whisper caution. She nodded slowly and gathered her things, knowing that this day would not end quietly. That night, as she returned home, she found a note slipped under her door, written in a hand she did not recognize. It simply said, "Meet me at midnight by the old warehouse on the outskirts of town," and came with a symbol that sent a chill down her spine. A symbol she had only seen in her darkest memories. The old warehouse was surrounded by silence as Emma approached under the pale light of the moon. Her footsteps echoed in the empty streets, and her breath came in quiet, measured bursts. She was not sure what or who awaited her, but she was ready. Whatever lay ahead was a challenge she could not refuse. As she stepped inside the building, the air was thick with dust and secrets. The shadows danced on the walls like ghosts from the past, and a figure emerged from the darkness, a woman cloaked in mystery and authority. Woman introduced herself as Lila. someone who knew about Emma's talent and about the long-hidden world of sharpshooters, spies, and assassins who operated in the shadows. The 6,000-meter shot was not just a feat of skill, but a signal, a message. To those who watched and waited for the right moment, Emma listened as Lila spoke of a secret organization that recruited the best marksmen and women from around the world, training them for missions that could change the fate of nations. The stranger at the range was one of their agents sent to test her, and now they wanted her to join. Emma felt a mixture of fear and excitement swirling inside her. She had always believed her skills were meant for something greater, but the reality was daunting. The training, the missions, the lives at risk. It was a world she had never imagined yet. It called to her like a distant echo from her past. Lila handed her a card with a cryptic address and told her to decide carefully. For once, she crossed that threshold. There would be no turning back. As Emma left the warehouse, her mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and questions. The city around her seemed different, somehow darker and more alive with secrets waiting to be uncovered. She walked through the empty streets, her fingers brushing the card in her pocket, and she knew that the shot she had fired earlier was only the beginning of a journey that would test every part of her being. Back at her apartment, the night deepened, and the silence pressed close. Emma stared out the window, watching the stars blink cold and distant, when suddenly the lights flickered and a soft buzzing filled the room. The phone rang, its shrill tone breaking. The quiet she answered with a steady voice, and a voice on the other end whispered a warning, a threat, and a promise that the game had just begun. Emma tightened her grip on the receiver, her resolve hardening like steel. The next day at the range, the usual crowd was gone, replaced by a tense, nervous energy. Emma felt eyes on her again, and she knew the stranger was back, watching from a distance this time, with others hidden in plain sight. Her every move was measured, every breath calculated, as she prepared for the shot that would not just prove her skill, but send a message to those who sought to control her talent. With the old rifle in her hands, Emma raised it once more and took aim, her heart steady and her mind clear. The 6,000-meter shot was not just a challenge anymore. It was a declaration, a warning, and a promise all at once. As the bullet left the barrel, the world held its breath, and the target waited silently for the impossible to happen again. The bullet traced its invisible path across the vast expanse of the range, cutting through the air with a whisper of power and precision. Emma stood perfectly still, as if frozen in time, her eyes locked on the scope and the distant target. She had become the very embodiment of focused determination and calm. Her heart beat in slow, measured rhythms, syncing with the world around her as the final moment approached. The target seemed impossibly far, yet she knew that her shot would find it. But something had changed in the atmosphere, a tension that no one could see but everyone could feel. The watchers at the edge of the range held their breath, and the stranger who had haunted Emma's steps appeared once more. This time stepping fully into the clearing, their eyes were sharp, cold, and calculating, a stark contrast to Emma's quiet resolve. Their presence was a reminder that this shot was no longer just a test, but a challenge, a confrontation with forces far greater than anyone imagined. As the bullet struck the target dead center again, a ripple of shock passed through the crowd, but before anyone could celebrate, the ground beneath them trembled lightly. A low rumble grew steadily louder, shaking the very earth beneath their feet. The trees swayed as if whispering warnings, and the air grew thick with an electric charge. Emma's eyes darted toward the stranger, who nodded subtly as if confirming a plan that had been set in motion. Suddenly, without warning, figures emerged from the shadows, their movements swift and silent. They were clad in dark clothing, faces obscured by masks and eyes gleaming with intent. These were not ordinary people, but agents of a hidden power, seeking to control or eliminate anyone who posed a threat. Emma's instincts screamed danger. But there was no time to react as the strangers surrounded the range, cutting off all escape routes. The man who ran the range stepped forward, trying to reason with the intruders, but they ignored him. Their focus locked solely on Emma. Their leader stepped closer, a tall figure with a voice like ice demanding that Emma surrender her rifle and come with them. The crowd held its breath, caught between fear and awe, and Emma's mind raced, searching for a way out, a way to turn, the odds in her favor. With a sudden, swift movement, Emma raised her rifle and fired not at the target, but toward the attackers. A shot rang out, precise and deadly, hitting the weapon from the hand of one of the agents, causing a brief chaos in their ranks. The crowd scattered, but Emma moved with practiced agility, taking cover behind the barriers, her eyes scanning for the next threat. Every move she made was calculated and fluid, a dance of survival and defiance. The leader snarled, ordering his team to capture her, but Emma had anticipated this. She knew that her shot had marked her not just as a threat, but as a key player in a dangerous game of power and control. The agents advanced, but Emma used the terrain, the shadows, and her quick reflexes to stay one step ahead. Her mind raced with memories of training missions, whispered secrets and hidden alliances that had prepared her for moments just like this. As she ducked behind a stack of crates, she noticed a small device blinking, faintly attached to one of the agents, a tracker, or perhaps a bomb. Emma realized she needed to act fast. She took aim again, firing a precise shot that disabled the device, causing a small explosion that stunned the attackers, but did not end the threat. The leader cursed and lunged forward, forcing Emma to retreat deeper into the maze of the range. Her thoughts flickered to the card Lila had given her. The address, the promise of a new beginning, or perhaps a trap Emma knew she had to reach. That place and find answers before it was too late. The attackers were relentless, closing in with every step, their voices harsh and unforgiving. But Emma's resolve was unbreakable. She moved swiftly, calculating her route, knowing that every second counted. Suddenly, a noise from behind caught her attention. A figure emerged from the shadows. It was Lila, the mysterious woman who had spoken of the secret world Emma had stepped into. She was armed and ready, offering a lifeline in the chaos. Lila pulled Emma into a narrow corridor hidden from the attackers and whispered urgently that their fight was just beginning, that the 6,000-meter shot had unleashed forces that could not be contained. Together, they navigated through the labyrinth of abandoned buildings and silent streets, their pursuers close behind, but unable to catch them. The city around them seemed alive with secrets and dangers lurking in every shadow. Emma's mind spun with questions about who Lila really was and what the secret organization wanted from her. The weight of the rifle felt heavier now. Not just a tool, but a symbol of a destiny she had yet to fully understand. As dawn began to break, they reached the location on the card. An old warehouse, much like the one where Emma had first met Lila. But inside, this place was different, filled with technology and weapons, and people who looked at Emma with a mixture of hope and caution. She was led to a room where a group of sharpshooters trained and prepared for missions that shaped the balance of power across the globe. Emma listened as they told her stories of battles fought in silence, missions carried out under the cover of night, and the sacrifices made by those who wielded their skills. In shadows, her own journey was just beginning, and the 6,000-meter shot was a call to arms, a signal that she had been chosen for something greater than herself. Yet the question remained who had sent the agents and what was the ultimate goal of the organization that hunted her. Suddenly alarms blared through the facility, a warning that danger had found them once again. The attackers had tracked Emma to their sanctuary and were now launching an assault. A fierce battle erupted, the sharpshooters moving with deadly precision to defend their base. Emma took her place among them, her rifle singing through the chaos, every shot a statement of defiance and survival. The fight was brutal and relentless, but as the dust settled, Emma stood victorious yet more aware than ever of the dangers that lay ahead. She knew that the 6,000-meter shot was more than just a feat of marksmanship. It was a key to a secret world filled with enemies and allies, deception and truth power, and sacrifice. In the quiet aftermath, Emma made a choice to embrace her new life, to step into the shadows where her skills could make a difference, and to face whatever challenges awaited with courage and resolve. The path ahead was uncertain and fraught with peril, but she was ready to walk it, for the shot that stunned the range was only the beginning of her story.